Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. We're looking at the Ruy Lopez opening. In this particular game, we have Matanovic versus Janosevic. This was in the Yugoslavian Championships in 1953. They played the Ruy Lopez, and this is called the Schliemann Variation, or the Schliemann Defense. So let's see how this works. E4, E5, typical for the Ruy Lopez. Knight F3, Knight C6, still more typical. Bishop comes out, hits the knight. And now, instead of confronting the bishop immediately, Schliemann said, let him sit there, who cares? Let's push the F-pawn, hitting the center. Let's see how this works. That's kind of interesting. White brings out his other knight, and black does likewise. So this is kind of an interesting look at the Ruy Lopez. The E will take that F-pawn, and the bishop goes to C5. So we've got a good development. We have a great fight for the center. And both at this point castle. So the Schliemann defense gives us a fairly interesting, and then rook king 1, and that is typical of Ruy Lopez grabbing the file just as quick as you can, and give support to the center, give support to the bishop here. Let's see what happens. Knight A4. We're going to come on the attack and hit the bishop. And instead of reacting, because technically there's no other really good square that bishop can go to, he pushes the E4 pawn and he says, okay, you take the bishop, I'll take the knight. And the idea is it's going to break up the kingside pawns when he exchanges if he doesn't take it with his queen. And there can be some tricks if he does take it with his queen. Knight went ahead and took the bishop at C5. And D took that knight, not that knight. Bishop took that knight. Very interesting, almost a liquidation here of this side. With several minor piece exchanges. And now the knight comes to H4, supporting his F-pawn. So G5 hit the knight, massacring that king side completely, and then he takes the pawn en passant, and here comes a pawn, really interesting. Knight comes to G4, which is on a king side attack. The real nice thing about the knight on G4 is you're hitting the H2 and the F2, and those can make some deadly combinations. Yeah? So black is on the attack. White says, let's go check. Notice how he bears open that king completely, but he does not take the pawn. He goes to G7. And now G3, he's got to bump up. Things are going to start happening here. Queen comes to D4 instead of... He bumps up because the queen taking that would have been an absolutely devastating attack. But he still has a really powerful attack here. Let's see how he handles this. Of course, Queen E2. You have to protect that square right there. Man, you've got the rook on the file, the queen, and black is controlling the center, and he's got the attack with the bishop that can come up pretty quick too. So this is not looking good for white at all. And even though he has a triple stack of pawns. Yikes. Had he focused and worried about that and tried to get those moving and all that, he couldn't have possibly developed and coordinated his pieces. Notice that black has all the space. That is absolutely one of the imbalances that makes a difference in this game. Black has all the space here to work. All he wants. And here's his coordinated attack. Instead of the queen, use the rook. Yeah, target. Acquiring more targets. Queen took e4. And now rook went f1. Check. And it was at this time that white resigned. Bummer, dude. However, look. If the rook takes the rook, then the queen takes the queen. So you lose your queen, which basically leaves you nowhere. And if the king takes the rook, then the queen goes to f2 and mates. So with the knight on g4, involving a queen, either one of these weak squares can be used as an attack. And it worked on this. Now this was a really short game with the Ruy Lopez. So I'm going to do another game showing how the white was victorious with this Schliemann variation. So hang on, I'll be right back with the second game. All right, this second game is where white wins. This is Trifunovic versus Kostic in 1930. So let's see how he handles this Ruy Lopez with the Schliemann defense. Typical Ruy Lopez up to this point, then ignoring the bishop, he pushes the f5 pawn. And he brings out his knight. White will respond usually with that, and now black takes the pawn. Last game, white was able to take the f-pawn. This time, black's f-pawn takes the e-pawn. So this will be interesting to see how this changes it up. The knight will take the pawn, of course. That's a typical exchange with this. Now he's going to start preparing the castle by developing. In the meantime, white hits the center with that d4 push. The e will take the d4. That makes perfect sense. Taking a little bit of the tension off, but possessing it. And now white will castle. And knight f6. Black is getting ready to castle himself. Knight will take the f6 pawn, or f6 pawn, f6 knight, which is one of the guardians of the castled king. That's kind of interesting how he hit that so very quick. Yeah. And the bishop takes. And now, as typical in the Ruy Lopez, it's a pretty speedy acquisition of the open file with the rook in the Ruy Lopez, and check to the king. Knight comes to king 2, no worry, it didn't affect his castling ability at this point. And now knight to g5. Now this is a key play. We know with the knight coming up like that, there can be some really tough kingside attacks. That's an ideal post for the knight on g5. And he goes ahead and castles. So we've got this castling situation done, and now the knight goes ahead and takes h7 right now. Starts cracking the kingside open immediately. Very interesting how fast he brings on this kingside attack. And of course the queen to h7. That's the other. This combination, putting the knight up, whether you're white or black. We saw the same combination with the black pieces doing that in the last game, right? In the previous game. Now we're seeing it this way, except the white went ahead and sacrificed the knight right now, and now he's got the attack bringing in the queen. So the king does back into g8, and bishop comes to, no, not that one, this one, bishop to d3. Yeah, I was going to say, there was no way he put that bishop there. Pay attention, son, pay attention. Now, black also brings his rook over to e8. Yes? The pawn push. Yeah, he's wrecking his kingside cover, but he's going for a kingside attack. because he's already begun to crack the black king side. He's committed. He's put his queen over there. His bishop is pointing that direction, and the rook can get in on this, so it's definitely a king side attack. When they start playing like this, you need to pay attention. It's a king side coming at you. d6, g5, no question now hitting the bishop. Now the bishop gets a great outpost also, but the queen's got it. Not necessarily an attack just yet, but, and now it's bishop h7. White has the initiative. Once you begin, the ideal is once you begin attacking a king side, you literally throw everything at it. It doesn't matter if you have to sacrifice 3 of your pieces. Make sure that your king side works, because after you've sacrificed everything, if you can't checkmate the king, you can end up losing, right? But he's trying to flush the king out, and that's what that move does, is it flushes the king out over to king f8, yeah? And now, queen f3 check, and he resigns. But really kind of a nice, quick Ruy Lopez opening with the Schliemann, with that kingside attack. The Schliemann defense is interesting in that it ignores pushing the queen pawn, or the queen, the Cadfrey, that pawn against the bishop. Instead, you work on the center much more. You open up files much faster through the exchange of pawns, so that it seems to me at this point, now granted this is only 2 games, that by opening up files, you get an attack faster. So that's the Schliemann variation. I've got a couple of Ruy Lopez's that I want to show from Bobby Fischer's games. These are his later games, where he is completely demolishing everyone, and they're kind of fun. So, for these 2, thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I will see you in the next video with a bright, shiny, happy, smiling face, your chessboard, your bowl of popcorn, and your cup of coffee. Or bone broth. Drink bone broth. Try it. It's delicious. Alrighty, you guys. I'll see you in the next video.